We are back recording and the meeting's underway, okay? So we're moving on to open space concept design, pages 9 and 10. Anybody any questions on this? No indications? No? Okay, we'll move on to the Eastern Promenade Western Breakwater Sea Defences, page 10. It's only one page. We can always drop back if we need to. Any questions on the Eastern Promenade and Western Breakwater Sea Defences? Please. Councillor Pratt has indicated he'd like to speak. Councillor Pratt?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have no real concerns with the sea defences on the Eastern Prom.
Oh, I've hit the mute button. Sorry.
Right, there you go. I'm being silent.
Sorry again, John. I hit the mute button. Mistake. My fault.
So I don't have any real concerns over the sea defences at Eastern Prom and Western Breakwater, but under the guise of Porthcawl regeneration, under the shoreline management plan, sea defences in Newton are going to fail, and with no plans to put in new ones or put in new ones. We'll go with that one. And but is there any plans from the local authority to tackle that concern, or is my ward in Newton going to be abandoned to the seas effectively? Obviously, Beach Road is a big concern for us, right on the coast, and so any answers we can have on that plan would be very useful. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks to Councillor Pratt. Yeah. Well, obviously, if we hold water back upstream, it'll push further up. That's the sort of my length of my knowledge on it. But anyway, anybody? Councillor Jean? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question, Councillor Pratt. I think that's a very pertinent question. Actually, we have got a shoreline management plan. The issue that we have is the funding of these initiatives are multi-million pounds. We were given the £10 million grant, or 9.4 million, for the Eastern Prom as part of a Welsh Government initiative. But what I will do, if you would let me, Chair, is do a written response to Councillor Pratt, because I'll go back to the officers and find out where we are in searching. Are we looking for grant funding? What is the forward plan? Because I don't have as much knowledge of that plan as obviously the officers have. So please let me come back to Councillor Pratt with some information.
Councillor Pratt's happy with that. Janine, yeah. Well, I don't see any more questions on this topic, so I shall move on to the Ford retail store, aka Aldi's, I believe, isn't it? Page 11. Sorry, did I miss one out, did I? Oh, sorry, Porthcawl Resort Investment Focus, PRIF, Cozy Corner, sorry, page 10 to 11. My mistake. I jumped ahead then. I've got Councillor Phil Jenkins. Oh, he's gone. Councillor Marty Williams.
Yeah, sorry, it was on the other page, sorry.
Okay, Phil. Thanks, Phil. Councillor Marty Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The PRIF, it's another acronym, isn't it, really? So could we have a sort of brief overview of what it was and what it included? Because I understand there were projects such as a Newton Beach Centre and other things. So what was included? And I think there's a park and ride, perhaps at the original, back when it was first mooted. There's talk in there as well. Sorry, I've lost my page now. Talk in there is about adopting a partnership approach with the key stakeholders. So who are or were the key stakeholders in the PRIF? And basically, so who were the stakeholders? What was involved? What was it all about? And I think there's talk there as well. Oh, I just looked this on a different page. Give us a second, sorry, Chair. No, that's fine.
Can I ask a quick question just before you answer, Councillor Williams? When it says resort, what's called resort investment focus, is that just the Cozy Corner area? Does that mean anything wider than that? That's what I'd like to clarify first.
No, the PRIF funding was a funding that was set up by Welsh Government, and you could apply for it for a wider remit.
Right.
But today's topic of PRIF is finished now,
Right.
and the last scheme to be funded under PRIF is Cosy
What's
Corner.
Cozy
So that's the information I've got today on Cosy
Yeah,
Corner.
That's it, thank you, yeah.
I can't go back on previous PRIFs.
Right.
I can go back. We can provide a written response if that is what the councillor is seeking. And with regard to stakeholders, is stakeholders pertinent to Cosy Corner? Because when we went back to Welsh Government for the Visit Wales monies, what they'd asked us to do was to look at economic development, look at retail, and our cabinet in particular wanted to take some of the key stakeholders with them. For instance, the Sea Cadets. The Sea Cadets were based in a permanent building and were put into porter cabins, and had been, I believe, offered space in any new build by Credi. So we were asked to look at accommodating their needs going forward. And other key stakeholders will be the people who own businesses in the surrounding area, the marina berth holders. There's a whole extent to the business community. So what we wanted to make sure is that we spoke to all of those and brought forward a proposal that we consulted on.
Okay. Councillor Williams, are you happy with the written response? With the earlier PRIF?
A written response will be fine. I've remembered the question. I just forgot because I lost it in the text.
You are happy with that? You are
Oh,
happy?
yes, no, I'm
Yeah,
perfectly
okay.
happy with that. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It says, I think it's the third or fourth second bullet point. It says potentially funding still available through the TAD programme for Cosy Corner. So if there is this potential funding, how much is it, and do we have ambitions to release it? The other question about stakeholders, is in the 2017 Cabinet report, which is long before Janine joined us, it mentions that the PRIF would be in association with the Porthcawl Harbourside Kick. Is that what ultimately became Credi? Was that his predecessor?
I'm going to stop everybody here a second. I got Councillor Nora Clark as indicated. Is this a question, Councillor Clark? Or?
I was going to ask a question.
Well, I'll come back to you if you can ask a question. Just in case there was something
I was
else.
going to ask a question, but obviously if there's talk about Credi, I'm going to have to declare
I know,
that's
why I brought you in now. We sort of going on to the...
It was purely clarification as to what that body was, because it was in association with Porthcawl Harbourside Kick.
We're not talking about it, I think. No,
I'm not discussing that. No, I can't discuss that. I can't discuss Credi because it's subject to action. I can't discuss that, I'm afraid.
You say it can't be discussed. Nora, you got another question to ask?
Yes.
You're next, so
yes,
right away.
I wanted to ask a question because obviously in the Cosy Corner site now, there's going to be incorporated a public toilet and changing facilities. As we know, Bridgend County Borough wanted to offload John Street toilets, and they were going to close them. And I believe that Porthcawl Town Council is running them on a licence at the moment. I'm not sure about that, but that's the way I surmise it. And I'm just wondering, going forward, who is going to finance the toilets and the changing places?
Maintenance, you mean, is it, Nora? Maintenance and
yeah, the maintenance,
cleaning,
the running the water, etc.,
yeah.
etc. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I can answer that, Chair. Yeah, the maintenance of those toilets and changing facilities is going to be written into the head lease for the A3 cafe use in the middle of the development. As part of that, they will maintain those facilities. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
It's a similar arrangement to down in Rest Bay Water Sports Centre. We do the same thing down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. There's no further indications on the PRIF, so I'm going to move on to the Ford retail store, the Aldi store, I believe is. That's page 11. Any questions on the food retail store? It's almost completed, this, isn't it? So what we can really discuss on this, I don't know. But it's in there, so we note that, yeah. Oh, hang on. Oh, my God. Councillor Clark, yours a legacy hand, I take it, is it? Yeah. Take Councillor Clark out, and he's got Councillor Bledsoe come in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In relation to the awarding of the selling, if that's the right word, of the site to the people who are developing it, I don't suppose it's confidential. They're building it. It's oldie. Can I have an understanding of the qualifying criteria for the successful application? Was it purely based on the highest bid that would generate the highest receipts for the authority, or were there other qualifying criteria that may have fitted in with the vision for Porthcawl, if it fitted a brief, or whether it was purely highest bidder?
Yeah, not a problem at all. I can refer to that. When we discussed this earlier, maybe the language is slightly complicated, but we put together a very detailed development brief that was agreed by the Development Control Committee for the disposal of that site. Because the most important thing for us was that we had good quality design. We wanted the best consideration for the site as well, but the good quality design was number one. So what we did, we had a very detailed brief that went out that said we didn't want a run-of-the-mill box. We wanted good landscaping. It had to have some distinctive architectural quality, good quality materials, etc., etc. We also offered, before the tender process start, an opportunity for any of the prospective retailers.
Councillor Jenkins, I think you might be on. Thank you.
Yeah, we also offered to the potential retailers before the site, the tender started, an opportunity to come in and meet with our planners and discuss some of their ideas for the site design. So what happened then is that we went to tender, and the first thing we did, we had 5 tenders in for the site, a lot of interest for the site. The first thing we did was have a look at how their proposal matched against the design brief. And from the 5 tenders we received, 3 did not match the design brief and were discounted at that stage, one of which was the highest bidder. But they didn't come in to see the planners. It was not a great design, so it was discounted at that. We then had 2 bidders that came forward into round 2, and then they were both designs that we thought was suitable for the site. And then in round 2, what it was best consideration. So then we accepted the bid from Aldi because it had passed the design bar and it passed the best consideration. So a 2-stage process, design first, best consideration second. And I think it was so successful that if we do other schemes, we'll run it in the same way, because then that ensures that you get the best design for that area. So if we look at disposing of sites in the future, we think we'll do a similar procurement.
I can ask one quick question, Janine. Did you always consider it for retail use? Was there no other sort of uses proffered for this land? How did it become a supermarket? Where did that come from?
I'm afraid that's a historic one, Chair.
Right. Okay.
When I came into post, that site was earmarked for a retail site. I think there's a long history on Salt Lake with retail stores. Very large supermarket, I believe, at one point was planned on the entirety of Salt Lake. I know John knows far more about this than me. However, we now have a neighbourhood food store. It doesn't sell, it won't compete with the town centre in terms of some of the offer that's there. That was important to us, that it was complementary and not competing with the local centre.
Okay, thanks, Janine. I have Councillor Philip Jenkins, please.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I wanted to come in on the next subject, if you don't mind.
Yeah, okay, we'll bring you in. I don't see any further questions on the Aldi store, so we can move on to the Metrolink bus terminus, which is pages 11 to 12 on the report. Councillor Jenkins, your hand is still number 1, so in you come, please.
Yeah, and I'm mindful, like you say, that maybe another colleagues would like to speak on that. Well, but obviously, we have an extensive, £1 million a bay for which he works out at for this bus station. My question really is, given the history also of Bridgend bus station, and I don't know if everybody was aware this morning on the television, the national news spent several minutes along with the local news where they indicated over the last 5 years up to a third of the UK's bus transport systems have been lost. So I have a very real concern that the bus station will be used, and what undertakings have the BCBC been given by bus operators to run a service continually in and out of the Porthcawl, and to what extent and what times. And the other one is, will BCBC be getting give the undertaking that this bus station will be run and maintained by those? Because it's been a while in the evening. I will admit that I've been to Bridgend, but I had one occasion when I had to come from the hospital down. I mean, I had to wait in the cold and the wind and the rain because the station was shut up due to various reasons, and has been for years. So it was closed early, and you're waiting outside of a building that you could be sitting in out of the weather, but it was locked up. So what undertakings have been given now to ensure that the public transport system will run, and will run up to a certain level in the evenings, and who will run and maintain it and keep it open for the public? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Julie?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Let me take your second question first, because that's an easier one to answer. There will be a revenue cost of running that facility. So there's a couple of things we're doing. Number one, we're looking at a possible concession. In the one end, there's water and electricity there, and it's completely enclosed, and we're looking at, is there anything we can do there to provide a revenue income? And the second is we're looking at the revenue that is coming from the Cosy Corner retail units. We're looking at, can those 4 retail units provide the revenue to maintain the terminus? Sorry, it's not terminus. I shouldn't have said that. The metro stop. That's the answer to that one. So we're looking at different sources of revenue. And then with regards to the times of buses in and out of Porthcawl, I'm afraid I can't give you any assurances they will continue. That is a question for the bus operator that I would suggest Councillor Jenkins contacts First Cymru, I believe, come in and out. And I believe when we discussed this extensively at Council a couple of weeks ago, Councillor Jenkins also talked about National Express, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, so I would, yes, it's, that I am fully aware of issues with buses. But I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I think he needs to direct that question to the operators themselves.
Just for clarity, the current service, Councillor Jenkins, I bring you back in now, 2 seconds. The current service in the Gen, just First Cymru or whatever they are, that's not subsidised, that service, do we know?
No, it isn't currently. That's the First Cymru services were subsidised up until about 3 or 4 years ago. But however, under an MTFS saving, bus subsidies were stopped. During COVID, the Welsh Government has been providing what's called Bus Emergency Services, BES grant funding. They've been providing BES 1 and 2, and we're getting into the third period of that, and I believe that's under review currently. So Welsh Government have been subsidising buses because the patronage hasn't got back to pre-pandemic levels. And to be honest, Chair, I think people just live very differently now. We talk about pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Well, it's just a new way of life now, a new way people shop and conduct their businesses, etc. So First Cymru are looking at that. They're having conversations with us about the viability of bus services going forward. It's the same across the UK. Yeah. However, what you can be assured that the Cabinet and the Leader have asked us to look very closely at this because we do not want a borough that isn't served, particularly our valley areas such as the Garw and Ogmore, who don't have alternative provision. For instance, Councillor Jenkins' valley, the Llynfi Valley, has a rail. Not we're saying we don't want buses, of course we do, and some of the buses that travel in out of Llynfi Valley are very well used. Right. But we do need to maintain a bus service. So that's a current and ongoing discussion. But with regard to the Metrolink, it's a critical bit of infrastructure as part of our LDP and as part of the placemaking strategy, and we cannot redevelop Porthcawl unless we put that public transport infrastructure in place. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, good. Councillor Jenkins, you want to come back in quickly?
Yes, I do really, and it probably was a bit unfair for me to offload that one on to the director because she does not have direct control over that. I was just trying to point out that ultimately this could be a very expensive greenhouse or glasshouse, and perhaps we could grow tomatoes all year round in it if bus services fail, because the indications are they're getting worse and not better. So that was my major concern, so I'll leave it at that. But I do thank the director, and I apologise if I offloaded that question onto her. But it's one that seemed logical to me at the time, to build a bus station of this, such a nice looking thing and costly, and then not have a service running from it. Doesn't seem sensible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Time will tell, I suppose, what will happen. But Councillor Jonathan Pratt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not one to criticise progress, so I'll leave the bus terminus, bus stop, whatever you want to call it, alone. But in last year, I was speaking to the previous cabinet member for communities that, and I had this argument with him that it is just a bus stop, and I was quite angry when I saw the aspiration for the South Wales Metro, and it left Porthcawl out of rail essentially. Councillor Stuart Baldwin at the time told me that would be an aspiration, and to see the bus terminus stop, Metrolink, whatever we're calling it, as a stepping stone to progress. I wonder whether that statement is accurate if it was then as it is now. Is there any plans to bring any other type of public structure into Porthcawl, be that firmed up plans or just a vision? I just wonder where we are, or whether this is it for Porthcawl, as relying on our public transport being a bus service and a bus service alone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Jonathan, you would indicate you want to answer this?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Pratt. It's a very valid question, actually. The authority doesn't have any aspiration itself within its strategic transport programme as of yet to do anything other than develop the Metrolink. At the moment, with public transport in Bridgend and elsewhere in the southeast of Wales area, most of the use of public transport is actually bus. However, that said, Welsh Government and Transport for Wales, which is the organisation that's been set up specifically to look at transport solutions, strategic transport solutions in Wales, they are investigating various corridors of travel, and they have identified that the corridor between Porthcawl to Bridgend to Cardiff, Clinby Valley to Bridgend to Cardiff, these areas are extremely well patronised in terms of public transport, and there is demand. So these are what they call Metro Enhancement Framework Corridors, and there's a separate study of work that's going on. Not by us, this is by the national organisation, Transport for Wales, that is undertaking these studies and this work. We're part of the studies, and we will contribute where we can, but they'll be looking at all sorts of alternatives, and that could include light rail, the possibility that's been discussed before. We've also got in our LDP as well potential proposals to move the railway station in Pyle from its current location to a new location, which is actually where the old Pyle station used to be back in the 1960s, as part of the strategic site that borders the A48 and the M4. And if that was to happen, that would also increase the potential for putting a link in from that site directly to Porthcawl, some sort of rail tram option. I can't say when that's going to be. It could be many years in the future, but these things are being looked at, but it's been looked at outside of the organisation, even though we are consultees to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, yep. Councillor Melanie Evans next, please. Councillor Evans?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Really appreciate it. Firstly, can I just say thank you for the presentation, and the images look very, very impressive. So thank you for that. I don't want to actually be repeating anyone's questions, although because I have heard everything that you've said. But what I want to know is, with the Metrolink and beyond, really, are you confident that the necessary infrastructure improvements and transport providers can be sought, met, and deliver in order to improve public transport frequency and accessibility in and out of Porthcawl, and also looking at the bigger picture across the borough and the local network, as I do have concerns that so many people drive to Porthcawl. With this amount of investment, it's hoped comes greater footfall. However, I'm concerned this will be lost should there be a lack of parking, infrastructure and frequency of public transport. You have already mentioned that there are no plans for extra parking, just replacing the parking that has been taken away. Therefore, where do you expect this extra footfall to go?
Janine, busy night.
Yeah, I'm scribbling down.
I saw, yeah, it was fairness to you.
Okay. I'm glad you liked the presentation. Thank you, Councillor Evans. We can't guarantee that transport providers will come. What we can do is we can build the infrastructure as we are. Importantly, we need to look at that 20-minute neighbourhood. We need to look at active travel routes. We need to look at public transport and making it as accessible as possible. Welsh Government policy currently is modal shift. They want us to shift from our cars onto more active travel routes, bikes, scooters, walking, buses and trains. But until those things are improved significantly, it's a cultural shift. However, when we are designing these new communities, we have to abide by this Welsh Government guidance and move forward in that way. Now, with regard to parking, we've got parking standards. We will, when we build these new developments out, we will be adhering to those. However, it is clear that a number of times a year, and I think it's 7 or 8 times a year, Porthcawl reaches capacity. And we do get people queuing to get into Porthcawl. Now, unfortunately, this is no different to Barry Island or other seaside, Ogmore, for instance, Ogmore by Sea. This is no different on those peak times. If you have a beautiful Easter with great weather and children are out of school, summer holidays, etc., bank holidays, you do get people who flock to the coast, and we have the most spectacular coast in South Wales, and rightly so. So this is no different. So what we can't do is plan for the excess, plan for those occasions when the transport is peak. We have to plan for a normal amount of traffic and movement, placemaking. So that's what we're doing, Councillor Evans. We're looking at the facilities that we're putting into place. We're looking at the homes and the leisure. We're accommodating parking standards where we can. We're looking to increase public transport, but we're doing an awful lot of studies into car parking in Porthcawl, because there is, again, quite a lot of misinformation that Porthcawl doesn't have enough parking. When we know it does, the majority of the time, 90%, 95% of the time, it does have enough parking, but it's those peak days I've just discussed when we do top over. And the actual fact is that that's very similar to other resorts. But I'm going to ask my colleague, Jacob Lawrence. He's got a little bit more information on parking in Porthcawl. I'm just going to give you a few little facts and figures, because there's still a lot of work to be done in this area to make sure we get the situation correct. Because what we want to do is to make sure that these facilities are accessible, but that pedestrians are priority. because that's the only way that you will deliver that high-class environment we're looking for. If you look at the Eastern Prom now, there's parking all the length of it. Sometimes you see large lorries park there, or camper vans or big vans park there overnight for free, block the view and the amenity. So what we need to do is to ensure that we have parking, in a suitable amount of parking, but that these sites are more accessible. But Jake, may I ask you to come in and explain some of the work that we're doing on the parking studies, because Jake has got quite a lot of background in this, Chair.
Thank you. Where, Jake?
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so if I may, just take members back to what we've actually done last summer. So bearing in mind last summer we were still coming out of COVID a little bit, but we had parking surveys undertaken across the entirety of the school holiday period. So what that was for 6 weeks we had ANPR cameras at the main car parks in Porthcawl, so that's Salt Lake, Hillsborough North, Hillsborough South, and also Sandy Lane. We also had fixed cameras on Eastern Prom and along the Esplanade. And essentially, when we look at the figures from a starting point, all of those parking areas are circa 1,500 spaces in terms of how many cars could fit within those spaces. Bearing in mind, Salt Lake's not marked, but that's the estimations based on the area there. What the survey told us was when we look at an average weekday peak, this is a weekday within the school holiday period, the average peak, so how many cars at any one time were in Porthcawl parked there, not how many cars in total across the day, but just at any one time, was circa 500 spaces. Then when we looked at the average Saturday peak, the figures were showing circa 700 spaces. And then in turn, the average Sunday peak was 550 spaces. Now, when you look at maximum peaks, it's a little bit of a different story, but again, quite similar insofar as the maximum weekday peak was 800 spaces. That was probably a really sunny Tuesday, let's say, within the school holidays. And then a maximum Saturday was again just below 900. Just below 800, and then the very maximum to the maximum at any given time across those 6 weeks of cars at one point in time that were recorded was 1,040. So what that information gives us is a good snapshot as to say, typically, what is the parking requirement in Porthcawl, and then that can look to inform any multi-storey car park capacity potentially, because last thing the council wants to do clearly is to build a car park that's too big and sits empty for 95% of the year. Likewise, you only build it once, you don't want to build it too small. But because these surveys were done during the kind of, I guess, the recovery from COVID, what we want to do is run them again this summer. So the exact same conditions to the survey, the 6-week period, cameras in the same location, so we can have a comparison to see has there been a further uplift in parking or not, and then that will inform any car parking capacity. And one factor and links into the thing that a lot of other colleagues have mentioned today is the need to push for a modal shift. So when we look at, let's say, for argument's sake, if the evidence shows us we need 800 spaces, and that's the average peak, the question needs to be asked, the authority needs to ask itself this question, should we be building those 800 spaces, or should we be building slightly less to encourage people to get on the bus more because they know actually they won't be guaranteed a car park? And that's a difficult conversation to be had, but one that needs to be had for sure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That Councillor Evans' questions. Any more, Janine? You done? Yeah. Councillor Evans, you happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, I get that obviously these strategic sort of like assessments are underway. However, I do have concerns because you are bringing in more facilities and yet we're not looking at basically the parking. It is a complete shift of behaviour for people, and actually to try and use public transport. But if that infrastructure is not there, I'm concerned that the footfall that is expecting to recuperate on that investment that's been put into the town is not going to come.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. There was no question there, I don't think, was there? No? It's Councillor Mike Kern next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Jonathan has just partly answered the question I was going to ask in his reply to Councillor Pratt, because when I saw on the bottom the enhanced public transport at Pyle railway station, I thought, well, that's not going to work for a start, because the original park and ride that was planned for Pyle never materialised because it was proven not to be possible. But when, as he's mentioned, the thought and the possibility of moving it back to where it was, which is literally just 100 yards across the bridge, would give you a much better scope then for park and ride. which would then reduce the number of cars going into Porthcawl, which would help the parking issues in Porthcawl, and it cuts down on the carbon. But as I said, as Jonathan has stated, they are looking into it, but it probably is a long way off, I know. But at present, Pyle railway station, as it is, would not, well, you could send as many buses as you like there, it just wouldn't make any difference. Anyway, that's basically was my question, but as I said, Jonathan has basically answered most of it anyway. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Councillor Steve Bledsow's next, please.
Thank you, Chair. And it is kind of building on what Councillor Kern just said. My overarching question on this report is why Pyle? Pyle is a small train station that's serviced by 2-car stock, where there are periods of the time of the day where 2 hours go past without a single train stopping there. Bridgend train station is 3.5 miles additionally away from Porthcawl, this site, as Pyle is. Bridgend services Maesteg line, Bailey Glamorgan line. It's a direct access on the HST line to London and Swansea, and to my mind would make a much better transport link, which is what the Metrolink is meant to be, than Pyle train station. I've mentioned to you before, Chair, I used to work for the railway. This site is east of Port Talbot, so you can't get any more capacity on the line to get any more trains to stop there. It's west of Cardiff, where the electrification stops. There's no more capacity to get any more trains to stop there. So why are we linking to a train station that goes, I mean, I've got the page in front of me, after 9:20, there isn't a train that stops at Pyle until 11:27. So why is this £4 million Metrolink infrastructure linking to that train station and not one which would be much more practical?
To Bridgend.
To Bridgend.
Yeah, okay.
It's the stop for the Maesteg line, the Bailey Glamorgan line to the airport. It's the HST to London and Swansea. If anyone catches a bus from Porthcawl to Pyle, they have to change at Bridgend to open up their options. They could go directly to Bridgend.
Okay. Jonathan, you going to take that one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For a valid observation. I think that there isn't. Originally, when we had the Metro project, the idea was to have a park and ride at Pyle, because it is actually a very well used railway station. Bridgend, I think, is the 4th busiest railway station in Wales, so it also is got quite a high capacity and high turnover of passengers. The Metrolink isn't directly linked to Pyle railway station. It's not dependent on Pyle railway station, and vice versa. The proposal we got in the LDP is to actually move the railway station, and that is to replicate the facility in a different geographical location, which would provide additional park and ride facilities, or make it easier to develop park and ride facilities, or bus linking facilities or tram train facilities from Pyle into Porthcawl. It is the nearest railway station to Porthcawl. So the aspiration is a longer term one, but the Metrolink is independent on that happening, or the development of the current railway station. But the Metrolink facility does have 4 bays, and one of those bays could in the future be utilised for a park and ride service, or some other transport facility in the future. But the member is quite correct. Bridgend is a very busy railway station, and there are works or studies undergoing at the moment on improving Bridgend railway station. That's underway, and we are looking at, as an authority, we are looking at improvements to that facility, and improving the park and ride, potentially improving the park and ride offer at Bridgend as well. So it's not just focusing on Pyle. We would also like to develop Pencoed railway station, and members be aware that we are trying to develop a new road bridge there as well, which will make hopefully will relieve congestion issues. So all of our railway infrastructure has been looked at in the round, including the Linvey line, where we are supportive of the aspiration to increase services on that line. This is part of our strategic transport projects, but the Pyle connection is a long-term aspiration if that happens. But the Metrolink can be developed, as a legitimate part of the Metro, South East Wales Metro system on its own. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Casey. Councillor Nora Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, will bus companies be paying to use the bus shelter in the new bus shelter in Porthcawl?
I'm not really sure, to be honest, Councillor Clark, on that. That's probably a matter, operational matter, going forward. Whether or not we're able to charge it, I think it's a departure fee. I'm not quite sure whether it would support it, but when we discussed this with the bus operators during the design and the feasibility work for this facility, they were more than happy to use it. I don't think we discussed any sort of departure fees at this stage. So, yeah. So no, I don't think there will be. But that is an operational matter, and that would depend very much on the operators going forward.
Would you like to come back in, Councillor Clark?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My reason for asking is in another meeting, I did ask about the so-called bus station that we already have in Porthcawl and whether that was going to be removed and be in place, you know, the new bus shelter be in place of that. And I was told that there was no steps afoot to remove that bus station that is there now. So if bus companies are asked to pay, which one are they going to use? They're going to use the one they don't have to pay for because it's only on the street. That's my concern.
Jean?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a bus stop. It's not a bus terminus. So there is actually a distinction between the two. For instance, Bridgend Bus Station supports the welfare of the drivers. They can get out, use facilities, etc., and they sit and they lay by, as in when services terminate, before the next timetable runs. So that's a terminus. This Metrolink is a bus stop, albeit it's 4 bays and fairly glamorous. So it's a bus stop. So buses will pull in, pick up passengers, and depart. And
there's no facility for drivers there to get out.
No, it's not. That is not its intention. Its intention is to be a bus stop, not a station.
Okay. Okay, no. I have Councillor Graham Walter. Next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if there isn't a little bit of an issue around the terminology and almost a fixation on pile. My understanding of current regulations around registering bus routes is that there's nothing stopping an operator, for example, wanting to register a route from Swansea to Porthcawl using that new facility, or likewise from Maesteg or wherever. Is there anything in the grant funding or the conditions attached to the financial award that would preclude such potential bus route registrations? Thank you.
Janine?
Yes.
Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Walter. The BES, the Bus Emergency Service Grant, goes straight to the operator, so they can subsidise their operation while the numbers of passengers are low. And it is for that operator to decide what routes they operate. Of course, we have discussions with them. We have particular concerns about parts of our borough that are not well served by other forms of public transport. And I know we've rehearsed this one, haven't we? Where we have areas like the Garw and the Ogmore valleys. Hillacue, for instance, is an isolated community. And so buses play a vital role in those communities as a form of public transport. However, it is for the operator gets that money direct from Welsh Government, and it's for them to decide what services they operate, Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
So the reality is then that if through the looking glass in a few years' time, Porthcawl is seen as a more attractive and viable destination for visitors from other communities. There's nothing stopping a transport operator seeking to register a commercial service from outside of the area and using that facility. That's the clarity I'm looking for. Thanks, Janine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the intention, Councillor. We've provided an attractive facility. Hopefully, we will attract people down there and they will come by public transport. Yeah, absolutely. If new providers want to come and use that facility, absolutely is there for that.
The phrase, isn't it? Thanks, Councillor Walter. Councillor Marty William, please.
I'm just giving apologies for Councillor Ian Williams, who's had to leave the meeting.
Thank you very much. Okay. I got Councillor. This will be the last word, I think, on this one now because we've got 2 more items to go. Councillor Jenkins, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Briefly, just to elaborate on my previous colleagues there, what facilities will be there for bus companies who wish to run a day trip type of thing, you know, whether it be for old age pensioners groups, the women's institutes, children visiting there, where would a bus be able to park for several hours a day? What facilities would be allowed for these people? Would the director be able to assist me on that?
Councillor Jenkins, they won't be parking in the Metrolink for 7 hours.
Did you mean a coach park somewhere, Councillor Jenkins? Somewhere else? Is that what you're referring to, or?
Yeah, I think that's what Councillor Jenkins is referring to.
Yes, a coach party that run, as they used to do years ago, run trips to and to the resort. What facilities will they be in and around that area for them to park?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, actually. We don't have a coach park planned as part of our regeneration. Because, to be fair, we've seen less and less of those over the years, actually. What we do see when we have trips operating is people come in and they pull into the lay-by at the top corner and drop. People get off and then the buses go elsewhere, Councillor Jenkins, and come back at the end of the day to pick people up. So we should ask those coach operators what they do in the interim period, whether they do other business, or whether, because that's what some do, they drop people off and pick them up, and in the meantime do school runs, etc. But we will ask that question, and if there is a need, or we perceive there's a need, that's something we can look into.
That's a good question. Councillor Jenkins?
Yeah, that'll be fine, because it is a feasibility given that the lack of commercial services, you know, so people do want to stop for several hours a day in Porthcawl, don't they?
If you're taking vehicles off the road, cars, and one bus would take 30, 40 cars, perhaps, wouldn't it, I suppose? So it's a good point. Yeah. Well made, Councillor Jenkins. On that note, we're going to move on to the next item, which is on pages 12 to 13 of the pack, and it's the Grand Pavilion. Do we have any questions on the Grand Pavilion, please? Councillor Martin Williams. Oh, no?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was sooner than I thought.
Off the mark,
oh, hang on, I almost asked Priff questions again then. Right, so obviously great parallels here with my stake Town Hall. Not as old a building, but nevertheless a historic, iconic building with all of the challenges that brings. So what lessons have we learned from my stake about creating, not just modernising, but upgrading and creating a new addition to a historic building? So what lessons have we learned there from my stake that we won't hopefully get the same pain in Porthcawl? The other question I have is to do with the funding, and if there were to be an overspend, how would that overspend be funded? Would it be the 90-10 split, the same as the core funding is, or would we carry the liability for any overspend? And my third question is, of the 20 million, how much of that is allocated to risk, construction risk? Thanks.
Apologies, just writing down the question.
No, we bated breath, we waiting.
What lessons have we learned? Yeah, they're 2 heritage buildings, but they're very different heritage buildings. They're both Grade 2 listed, but they are very, very different in age. Maesteg Town Hall dates back 1800s, and the pavilion is in the turn of the century, 1930s, etc., Art Deco. built of different material. The pavilion is built of concrete extensively. It was one of the first concrete design buildings in the UK. In fact, the French architect came over who specialised in it from Paris to have a look at how it was being developed. And of course, it's in a very different location. It's on a seafront location. So whilst, yes, there are heritage buildings, they both are Grade 2 listed, they're very, very different buildings in that respect. So an important part of looking at how we deal with this building is understanding its structure, etc., and the environment in which it sits, which is very different from my stake. However, what is important is we run significant numbers of capital schemes all across the borough, or are, and what is clear is that lately the cost price inflation issues we were having are affecting all projects and not just projects for BCBC or projects in the UK. Just if I take you to an example of the Levelling Up Fund, some local authorities were successful in round 1. We've been successful in round 2. And what has happened is some authorities have gone to develop their project, and when the tender has come in, it has exceeded the amount of money that they've been given from the LUF bid. So they haven't been able to go ahead with their project. So some projects in phase 1 have stopped and not gone ahead. Some projects have commenced construction and have had rising cost increases as a result. And some of those local authorities in England now have a large cost gap because there is no additional money available under LUF. So the one thing that we do know is we've got to be incredibly careful before we even start this project, that when those tenders come back, they're at a level that we're comfortable with. They're well within that 20 million envelope. That envelope includes not just building the building, but a significant risk element is in there going forward. Now, we've got to REBA stage 4 on that building. We've got architects in place who are looking at it for us. What will be important is we need to look at the procurement method. How are we going to procure a contractor? And importantly, we need to look at value engineering options should that tender come in way above the amount that we are seeking. If we take the example of a project we've just discussed at length, is the Metrolink. We had an estimated cost, and when the actual cost in the market came in, it was higher. We have an idea of the cost of this scheme, but when we come to tender later on this summer, when that cost comes back, then we have to look at the budget that we've got and see whether there's enough risk and contingency in that budget to enable us to deliver that project comfortably within the project envelope. Is there additional monies available? Well, there won't be additional monies available from the Levelling Up Fund. 18 million is it, as we know from other local authorities, and also it has to be delivered by December 2025. That's the cut-off date. So if we don't deliver by that time frame, very similar to the work we're doing at Maesteg Town Hall, we've got time frames on spending the money there. If we don't deliver within that time frame, then any work outside of that time frame isn't funded. So this project is not without some risks. It is a building, we've done extensive surveys now, and the beauty about this building as compared to a much older building in Maesteg Town Hall is the concrete spalling and problems are highly visible because of the way the building is constructed. However, that's not to say we won't get unforeseens once we start opening up that beautiful building. So just to recap, they're two very different buildings in different settings, albeit they're heritage. We've done an awful lot of work. We've commissioned architects and engineers to do all the back surveys for us. If we go to tender and it comes way above the LUF envelope and what we can afford, it will be a chance to value engineer to see whether we can deliver the scheme. But there is not additional monies from LUF. Maybe we can look to other funders to assist us. We're looking at the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Maybe they can assist us. We have 2 million in our capital programme for our 10%. But I think what we need to do is to complete that work, complete the procurement route, go out to the market and have a look later on this summer what those construction costs are coming in at. And then we'll be able to make a decision with Cabinet moving forward, Chair.
Thank you. Well, you answered my question, which was, can we go back to left for money if we run out? And it's an emphatic no, isn't it?
Nope,
Councillor Williams,
it's an
you
emphatic
come back in
no,
quickly
yeah.
on that?
No, that's fine. Thanks for that answer. And our question was very similar. I did ask for the percentage of risk provision, but on reflection, I won't ask that because it might give the game away. What I would ask is the director comfortable with the risk provision within that 20 million?
Yeah, obviously we can't discuss it. It's commercially competent, isn't it, until we tender. But yeah, it's a level that we use in other major construction contracts. So I know that the councillor will know what that level is.
Right, okay. We leave it at that.
He knows that. However, all will be revealed when the tenders come back.
Okay.
So.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nora Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. The facilities that are going to come along with this new project are really, really exciting. I know in years gone by there was talk of moving the library to the pavilion because the library in Porthcawl is quite a small library. I just like to know why that's fallen off this project, really. I know it wasn't obviously a portion to this project, but why is that not happening now?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clark. The short answer, there wasn't enough room in the building to incorporate a library, because what we have to do is ensure that building is a venue for conferencing, shows, entertainment, and that it fulfills its brief in terms of what the building was built for. However, there are aspirations to build a new library for Porthcawl. The Cabinet have an aspiration for that, and also to look at the Awella Moor Community Centre. So what we want to look at is, are there opportunities elsewhere in the redevelopment where we can pop in a new library and a new community centre together? And for instance, some of our thought process, although it's very early on in our thought process, is looking at some of the flatted developments we would be putting on Salt Lake Central, onto that beautiful long seafront park, seeing whether the ground floor there could be suitable. I think it'd be fantastic right in the middle of the redevelopment, opening onto the open space, whether we can have an adjoined community and library facility there. Of course, there's a long way to go on the feasibility, so it isn't in the pavilion, but please rest assured, it is a building we want to replace with a much better facility in the heart of the regeneration. So as we work on that, I think the phrase is watch this space, and we'll be happy to come forward and chat to you more about that in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janine.
Thank you. Councillor Melanie Evans, please. I think I'm going to make this the last one on this topic as well. The last
Thank
hand.
you. Okay, thank you, Chair. Obviously, with their new facilities proposed in point 4.35, page 12 and 13 of the report, are you confident that all these facilities, including new office facilities, will be utilised and occupied? As we are aware, more people are still working from home, and therefore the concern would be if these spaces remained empty. Also, in point 7.1, page 15, it is mentioned waterfront sites are largely unoccupied and underutilised and detract from the attractiveness of the area. One question I have is, apart from aesthetics, how do you propose to ensure all facilities will be occupied and utilised to their full potential? And are you confident that this will attract more tourism, keep tourism, and also local public interested, and more importantly, keep them returning to Porthcawl, thus giving a return on the investment in this one town? Thank you.
Yeah, short answer, yes. Longer answer, the facilities within the pavilion. The Grand Pavilion is run by Arwen Cultural Trust, and the facilities, the office facilities, to be fair, in the main are for the staff of RN to be in the facility and be able to provide that presence in the building day and night, of course, because this centre, the pavilion, will be around the clock practically. Lots and lots of new facilities mooted in this building, and that's to allow a number of events and cultural activities to happen at the same time. Now, for instance, if you're holding the panto, nothing else can go on in that building. It takes over that building. However, we'll have a separate studio and spaces. There's 2 wings to that beautiful bar and cafe environment. There'll be new changing facilities for the shows, etc. So you'll be able to have multiple performances on at one time. Now, why do we need that? Well, Arwen are telling us the cultural scene is increasing in popularity. People want to come out and want to visit attractions. There's more and more shows. The arts is growing in the sector, especially down in Porthcawl. There's a lot of call and demand. So at the moment, those facilities being put in, and Arwen will run a programme of activities, as well as catering for people who want to rent the space and run their own activities. So hopefully we will get those facilities well utilised and the building will become self-sustaining and a success. Now, it isn't just for arts and performances. They also want to do conferencing. They're going to have some of the state-of-the-art conference facilities. Now, this is quite interesting because when we look at what we're planning or what we hope to deliver for the rest of Salt Lake, we're looking at possibly a 4-star deluxe hotel, which would provide the bed space for the conference venue. So the two go hand in hand. And when we factor in the third big attractor in Porthcawl, which is the Royal Porthcawl golf course itself, which has been voted for the 5th year in a row the best golf course in Wales, you have a real triangulation of golf, the pavilion, the hotel, and you start to build up weekday productions as well as weekends. So there's quite a lot of economic benefit from what we're doing because we have to prove that going forward. But we talk about will facilities be utilised. I'll just give you an example of we don't want empty shops. Absolutely not. So we've got the Harlequin building, which is just off the Dock Street Road, and the Cosy Corner. Let's just take 2 examples. The Harlequin building, we had 5 or 6 different viable inquiries for letting that space in Porthcawl, and we've now selected a person to go into that space. And then with the Cosy Corner retail unit, significant numbers of people are interested in being part of Cosy Corner. And why is that? Well, Porthcawl isn't just a summer destination. If you go down there on a beautiful, crisp winter's day, even if you go down in the rain and the storms, there's lots and lots of people who come. People come to storm watch the waves. People come in the summer, the winter. You know, it is an all-round tourist destination. And this is why people want to have a visible presence there. So when we say that waterfront sites are detracting from the attractiveness, we're talking about the Salt Lake itself. It's a really tired area that nothing's been done to. That's not enhancing the attractiveness. And when we look at things like the Glamorgan Holiday Village, holiday home, when we look at the site we've got on the corner, the former Dunraven Flats, these are all sites we want to bring forward to enhance the regeneration going forward. Not part of BCBC's plans, of course. They're outside of our remit, but vitally important. So apologies, Councillor Evans, I went off on one then, but I'm hoping that you managed to follow my thread and I gave you some answers to the questions you were seeking. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janine, for that fully comprehensive answer. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no more indications, so we move on to financial implications on page 15 to 16. The last item on the, what I've got anyway on my list here. Any question? Councillor Martin Williams?
Thank you, Chair. And as you know, in the pre-meeting, I was unsure where this could fit in. Cosy Corner, and I'm mindful we have to tread carefully around this. So Cozy Corner there was a previous scheme which was externally funded with no input from BCBC, financial input from BCBC, and it seems to me that there was two missed opportunities potentially to save us the where are we, 2.7 just over £2 million that we've now put into to rescuing that or putting the new scheme in. So the question I would like to ask there, and there's two questions. This is the first question, and the second one's slightly different. The question I'd like to ask is, did this authority do all it could have done in the run-up to the demise of the existing project to support? And I go back to the question I asked earlier about the PRIF, and it's about partnership working and who were parties to the PRIF in the first place. And I'm mindful that a lot of the regeneration of Porthcawl will be dependent on third parties and external funding and perhaps private enterprise. And did we do all we could to try and support that project so that ultimately not only did the more ambitious project come to fruition, but that it frankly saved our taxpayers £2 million? And I think the second opportunity is the second question around this is, having failed, I know, having read the receiver's reports, that there was no approach to buy the project out of receivership. We had a project there which as I understand it, had a design, a full design. It was shovel ready. In fact, it had already started, and there was a fixed price construction contract in place. But there was no obvious, according to the receiver's report, this council didn't make an approach to buy that out of receivership or out of liquidation. Was that a missed opportunity, or were there things discussed around that? I've got another question, but it's not to do with Cozy Corner.
Right, so I'm going to stop you all. You comes the clerk who has indicated to speak. I need to bring it in at this point.
At this point, I'm going to declare a prejudicial interest, and I'm going to leave.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Clark. For Councillor Clark to. Okay, sorry. Okay, she's decided, in fairness, but she's 2 or 3 times she's wavered, and she's finally decided to go, which I can understand. Janine?
Yes, it's a very easy answer, Chair. I can't discuss credit. It's subject to a police investigation and an audit investigation, national audit investigation. And it went into receivership. I can't discuss that. And actually, I don't know. It is the other answer, because I wasn't in this authority till autumn 2020. But even if I did know, I can't discuss it, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Williams. Can you give Nora a shout for there, please, Councillor Pratt? Short and sweet, but she can come back in now. Oh, didn't have time to make a cup of tea. Okay, I got Councillor Nora Clark's. Councillor Bledsoe, please.
Thank you, Chair. Under financial implications, can I seek assurances of our procurement procedure for major projects like this, and the bus stop that's included in it? Do we have what is the current state of the UK construction industry that gives us a wide enough net to get good value from these major projects? I'm aware that companies like that were working on the Sunnyside go into liquidation and they disappear. And the less companies there are out there, the less value for money potentially we get, because the smaller the market, the higher the price can go. So what can we have some kind of idea of what's going on in the world of procurement at the moment? Because it is public money, and it is something I'm acutely aware of, that the number of companies willing to tender means a price hike.
Yes, certainly. We have corporate procurement rules that are in place for the council, and we have to follow those, and that's significant. A lot of the work that we tender is off the NPS framework, and there are a significant number of frameworks. There's SUS TAP, SUS GAP, and these are all South East Wales procurement frameworks with agreed rates that are administered for our region via Cardiff County Council. So the majority of things that we tender are via those frameworks for that very reason, to get those agreed rates. Now, what I can't do, of course, is guarantee that a company won't go into receivership. Obviously, I can't guarantee that. So what we do is we look at the financial due diligence. We request significant amount of information from the contractors to make sure they got liquidity, have they had previous experience, etc., etc. There is no guarantee in this climate that won't happen. It's unfortunate it happens. However, we've got corporate procurement rules in place, we've got frameworks in place, and everything is procured by our corporate procurement section. We put everything together, we pass it on to them, they run the procurement, and then it comes back when we assess the tender. So that is robust, no problems there. But I'm afraid I don't have a looking glass, there's no guarantee what's going to happen in the future, is there?
Can I apologise to Janine? I probably worded that clumsily. It's my fault. It wasn't so much in relation to if a company went bust during one of our contracts, although that assurance, as much as we can give, is welcome. It was more that we're dealing in a diminishing market where companies are going bust and the lower number. So I do thank Janine for the answer, but it was an apology for a clumsily asked question.
I can ask one quick onto that, Janine, if I may.
No, that's absolutely fine, Councillor Blether. Don't worry at all, it's fine.
Janine, is there a limit to who can bid for these, or do you not know who's been in procurement? Do you know?
Yeah, that's fine. When these frameworks, let me give you an example of one that I know really well.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a framework called SUSCAP, and it's where you buy new schools from. Okay, because I used to run the capital programme for Cardiff.
Yeah.
So you have different lots, 5 different lots, and contractors can bid to be on that lot. You have up to 5,000, up to 5 million, up to 10 million. It goes up and up and up, up to 25 million, etc. Now, the contractors have to come in and bid under the framework to be included. And there's an awful lot of tests, as I've described, financial, liquidity, quality, experiences, and then we get these frameworks put together. And genuinely what you have is about 5 contractors on each framework as you go up the levels, and 2 reserves. For instance, if you're tendering a school build, which we do here in Bridgend, and we tender out to the market, say we're building a £14 million school, and we tender on the 15 million and below lot to those 5. If all 5 come back with a tender, that's fine. If 4 come back with a tender, the 5th one will be asked why you haven't tendered, and someone from the reserve list will be asked to come up. But the beauty about this is all of these have gone through rigorous checks to be on the framework. So it gives you some comfort that you're working with people that have the experience and the liquidity and have all of the quality assurances in place. Now the framework lasts for 3 years, and then it's retendered. So you do get some churn. Of course, if companies go into administration, they come off the list and the reserve comes on. So there is some churn, but that is how most local authorities procure, unless it's a specialist build. So if there isn't a framework in place, for instance, if we want architectural services, we go to procurement and they say, here's the framework. And there's a list of architects firms very similar to the builders of school design that we then tender to that list. So some things we do to an open market, but in the main, we tender off frameworks and select lists. And that is to ensure that the people we're working with have passed all of the quality checks of procurement. Okay.
I'm going to give the last word to Councillor Martin Williams, sir. You're the only one showing, Councillor Williams. I'll be taking yours and then...
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. It was just going back to the affordability of everything, really. It was mentioned earlier that the sale of the retail sale realised 3.5 million capital receipts, which is earmarked for Porthcawl redevelopment. The latest capital programme shows that that's now diminished to 2.9, presumably because of the 600,000 budget transfer for the bus stop. Is what I'm saying is, that's gone down now by 600,000. Is there enough money left in that pot to deliver, the walkway that was talked about and other things, or the 2 million has been found for Cozy Corner as well, so that's 2.7 million. Do we have the funding to deliver all that we want to, given that it's being eroded?
Yeah, the simple answer to that is no. That is just the funding that's come out from the Aldi food store. We got other sites to sell for residential, and this will be a pot that is replenished as we dispose of other sites. So what the guarantee we've given is when we dispose of those land sites, we put the money into the capital programme, and then we use that money in Porthcawl. So money generated from Porthcawl will be used in Porthcawl. So what we are looking at is other sites that we hope to bring to the market later this spring. And then what we're also doing at the same time is designing out what that public realm will look like. And then we'll be able to put a cost on that as we move forward. This is a significant multi-million-pound regeneration. It'll probably take us the next 5 to 8 years to achieve. So what we'll see is that amount in the capital programme will go up and it'll go down as funds are added and as funds are taken out and spent. So we will see that pot go up and down. And I think that's a very pertinent point, actually, because when we were discussing the Metrolink, we were discussing the capital programme, and the capital programme is an allocation. It's not an actual budget. The actual budget is something very different. So this is a prime example of an allocation against Porthcawl, and when we sell some further land, money will go into the pot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, we have no further questions. So the invitees, I'd like to thank you very much for your attendance this evening, this evening, whatever. It's been very interesting. You're not required for the next item, so you can go and carry on. And do you want a quick 5 minutes, guys, while everyone's packing up? Sorry? Oh, Councillor Walter, I didn't...
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Before Janine and her colleagues leave, can I just say, as a local member, a huge thank you for all the work that's gone into preparing the report today, all the projects over the last couple of years. I've been involved in local politics in Porthcawl in one version or another for 12 years. And what we've seen today is a summary of an enormous amount of work, an enormous amount of progress, and a really, really positive position that we find ourselves in, despite, phrases like bus stop instead of metro interchange and so on and so forth. This is a very, very positive programme, and I want to express my thanks to all concerned. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Obrigado. It's still arguing about it. Is it bus stop or is it there? Sorry? We're still in the meeting, mate. Everybody, to warn you. Recording still going. Thank you, Janine. It was a good, very comprehensive answers, let's say, Well, I'm going to ask that question once we decide if... Thank you, Janine. Okay, we're going to move on quickly to the... I haven't called a break. I don't know if you want a break or not. Was he left the building or the... Do you want to call a quick 5 minutes just to get him back in? Can we stop the recording for 5 minutes? Literally 5 minutes just to...